feel ready. I feel like I can't do anything.
So last week while covering the films that inspired analog horror, I talked about how I wanted to cover Lake Mungo at some point due to the film being just that well made and horrifying for a mockumentary. So instead of doing a long wait on covering the film, I'm just going to do it this week, as this is just one of the best horror films to do the mockumentary style. And when I say it does the mockumentary for horror well, I truly mean it. They play this story completely and utterly straight. There is no crazy movie magic on display, and even though the film is technically a ghost story, there isn't anything so absolutely strange in there that it takes you out of the story whatsoever. And the story of the film has absolutely one of the most heartbreaking endings I've ever seen within a film, which I will get back into later. And the way the film is put together makes it one of the most cohesive mockumentaries out there, putting things like The Last Broadcast and The Blair Witch Project to shame. But I also wanted to compare it to one of my least favorite of the horror mockumentaries, which I think has been unfairly compared to Lake Mungo and the level of quality between the two films. And that is, of course, the Poughkeepsie tapes. I despise this movie. I have never understood why this film has gotten onto the same level of praise as Lake Mungo has, as I think the film fails at what makes everything in Lake Mungo interesting. And I do not say that lightly. I know horror films generally don't have as good of quality as a lot of the other genres do, but I think this one really stands out on just how bad it is. While the idea of the film, a serial killer creating tapes of all the victims he has captured and killed over the years, is frankly terrifying, and it has many links to what actual serial killers have done. But even though it has all that going for it, I think the film has one major central flaw that Lake Mungo does not have. And that big central flaw will really take you out of the film, as it's essential for making the idea of the horror mockumentary work. But you're gonna have to wait to find out. And before we go any further, remember to like and subscribe. And if you liked the video, comment down below your thoughts on it. And let's get on with the actual video. A 16-year-old in Australia named Alice Palmer drowns near a lake, and suddenly, while taking pictures, her older brother Matthew starts seeing her in the background of these images. This starts giving the mother and father some hope that maybe she is in the afterlife and is still there with them, essentially giving them some hope they lost when she died, and gives them some more reason to be happy because they think their daughter will always be with them. However, it's slowly revealed that all the photographs are indeed doctored by the brother to add Alice to the background of the images, as he wanted the parents to exhume the body to give them closure on what actually happened with Alice. But in one of the really shocking videos, it's revealed that Alice had in fact had a sexual encounter with one of the neighbors, Brett, in a somewhat shocking twist. Then one of the interviewees revealed that before she had drowned, she had been having nightmares and dreams about having herself drown, almost like she was having psychic visions of her own utter demise. Then Alice's boyfriend shows up with footage of Alice recorded on the night of her death on the school camping trip. During the footage, we see her burying something at the bottom of a tree near the lake. The family goes to the tree and finds a phone with some footage on it that she had recorded the night of her death. In the footage, we see her walking next to the lake when it reveals this.
I feel like I can't do anything.
To people not understanding the significance of this, the ghost looks almost exactly like the girl does after drowning. This is Alice seeing her own ghost, as the ghost looks exactly like the corpse that was shown earlier in the film. This scene is quite shocking, as the rest of the film has been sticking pretty closely to being as realistic as possible, which adds the extra layer of shock when the first explicitly supernatural thing happens within the film. There is no truly natural way to explain this. This can't be photoshopped or doctored in. This has to be a ghost that she is witnessing. Parents then leave the house, happy that they feel like their daughter has shown them what she wanted them to see, and that she has most likely moved on in the afterlife. But in a massive gut punch within the film, it reveals that Alice was actually within the photographs the whole time, hidden within the corners of the photos. So this leaves you with two possible ways of thinking about the ending. You could either believe that she actually was doing what they said, and that she was just trying to help them figure out what happened to her, leading them along the way, showing them the journey of her life, such as her death and her assault. However, this is not the picture that the film is probably trying to paint, and the actual picture is much more bleak. The other way of thinking is you could believe they were ignoring her throughout the whole film, like they have stated that they had done when she was actually alive, and were instead focusing on a list of non-issues and not on her actual presence within the film. And it shows either way that she has not indeed moved on, and she is still within the house. And either way, it leaves the sad idea that now that they have left, they have once again left her completely and utterly alone. And I think within the film it shows just how mysterious Alice was. I don't want to explicitly call the parents bad, but the parents don't seem to know much about her, as her friends seem to be able to talk more about what she was actually like, as the parents mostly just talk about her death rather than how she was as a person. Then this final picture just comes and continues with how she was in life, ignored and left behind. Even in death by her own parents, she is left completely and utterly alone. And this idea is frankly horrifically depressing and just leaves you completely heartbroken while watching the film, as just such a sad idea. The idea of this film has stuck with me since I watched it years ago. See, I watched it first around 6 years ago, and I liked it back then as I thought the filmmaking was just superb and well put together. But watching it now, I appreciate the story even more due to just how frankly horrific the idea is. The idea of drowning and then coming back as a ghost to try and communicate with your parents, just to be ignored, is such a sad and terrifying idea. And the ideas behind it will stick with you, guaranteed. What also makes this film work so well is the realism surrounding the ghost story. Besides one scene, the film sticks to a ridiculous level of realism that makes the supernatural part that much more believable. Even the way the ghost is put into the story feels real, just being in the background, essentially watching what's going on within the film. And the interviews also flow in a way that many other documentaries do. These are not crazy performances, these feel just like real people being interviewed. With how well this film is put together, you would think I would say that the film has no flaws, but it definitely has a couple. For example, the scene with the assault is just kind of put in there. They start the thread of what could have possibly happened with her and the neighbor, but it just sort of stops. It took me out of the film slightly, because most of the documentaries would have zeroed in on that and explored the thread to its end. The other thing that took me out of it was just how dark it was. I mean, yeah, a lot of it is raw footage, so this is somewhat a double-edged sword, but because of how dark it is, you can't really see anything. I don't expect studio lighting in the lake scene, for example, but I wish the photos had been a little bit brighter, as it makes it extremely difficult to see the final reveal even though they zoom in on it. But these aren't huge flaws, they're pretty small flaws in the whole scheme of things. But besides those very small gripes, the film works extremely well and will leave you completely devastated if you watch it. 8 out of 10. See, I was told by multiple people that this film would be right up my alley. A mockumentary on a serial killer where we see all the tapes the serial killer recorded of all of his victims, mainly focusing on the one that got out alive, Cheryl. We see Cheryl get tortured by the killer and turn into his slave, and as he messes with her family, including going to the parents' house and messing with the mother, as she realizes he is the killer. And all of that is essentially the main plot of the film. But what really ruins this film is the terrible amount of shock value within the film. The film has so much shock value, it reminds me of things like Urban Spook put into film form. I mean this seriously. The shock value of this film is so high that it goes back down to just being boring and unrealistic. You need to find a balance between shock and actual plot, and the plot of this film is so weak, And the film is based around shock value just entirely. There is nothing else of value going on within this film. This film is such a slog, and even though the idea of the film is slightly more realistic than Lake Mungo, the film feels less believable than the Ghost movie does. One of the parts that really stuck out with me is as something that is supposed to be a documentary, is actually showing the shocking parts within the film. See, while documentaries can be shocking, they usually don't cross the line of showing actual murders and torture, as that's plain just disgusting and disgraceful to the victims of the people in real life. Because of that, that film really takes me out, because I know no documentary would be made like this. It's just too over the top. And although the performances are muted like a documentary should be, the film doesn't stay realistic with the extremely graphic torture scenes that I think I've never seen in a documentary, and I've seen a lot of true crime documentaries. This film has so much shock value in it that it feels like something an edgy teenager would write, and I mean that in the harshest possible way. I highly dislike this film. This film frustrated me to no end, and I have seen some pretty terrible films over the years. I mean, one of my favorite genres is horror, for Christ's sake. That is one of the goofiest subgenres of any film. There's almost no, horror film that doesn't have a level of goofiness to it. But this film was shockingly bad, and it shows how I think you should not make one of these mockumentaries. I never understood why so many people were praising this film, and because of all the reasons I mentioned above, I give it a 2 out of 10. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and remember, if you liked the video, like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts down below. Anything is appreciated, and have a great week.